Alright, once again another deck profile, this time on a deck that I didn't think I was originally going to build, but end up building just because I like the character from the anime, and this is a lore based ride line because this is one of those ride lines that never showed up in the anime, due to the fact that the character ended up using a different card, basically possessing another unit, instead of basically using her own card. So this time we are going on the Evil Dragon Sybilt, which I really love that this is a lore based ride line, and I really hope that they do expand upon this because this ride line was actually pretty awesome and interesting. A little bit of a mix of Aequalibra plus Varga and a bit of Lyrical along with it, due to the fact that you're basically powering up your own board and retiring your own stuff while also bouncing your own stuff. So I found this deck a little interesting because of it, and also its cool design and concept that I end up building the deck. And also Sybilt was kind of one of my favorite characters despite being kind of a weird villain and all, but still likable enough for me to end up building the deck, because I was a little disappointed that Sybilt as a card never showed up in the anime. But with set 12, we recently got some new support that did power up the deck, although I would have to say it didn't exactly change the deck much, as the deck still played pretty much exactly the same, just with a few tweaks here and there. And the whole entire deck's playstyle, like I said, is a mix of Aequalibra, Lyrical, along with Varga, but it's all about basically, like how the anime said it, or the lore, mental pollution, basically screwing the minds of your own units to power them up. Basically, they go berserk, but they also end up killing themselves, hence a bit of the sad lore. And that's why I kind of like Sybilt, especially on what type of amalgamation that he turned into. But anyway, with all that out of the way, let's just begin with the deck profile with, of course, the ride deck. So we run our starter as Sybilt, because you actually have to run Sybilt as a starter, because the grade 1, which is his partner or her partner, Sybilt, when you ride on top of Sybilt, you can reveal a grade 3 Sybilt from your ride deck, and then search for one order card that is called Sybilt and Sybilt, who we once were, which is a lore based order card, and put it to your hand, of course shuffle your deck. Which we can now go over that right now with the order card itself, because you play it while your Vanguard is either Sybilt or Sybilt, and you give it this ability where when one of your rearguards is being retired, you can put it back to your hand. Which, here's the Lyrical bouncing part, and this is going to be essential because once you get to grade 2, it will make sense. In which the second skill from Drop Zone, when your Sybilt is stood by card ability, so that means that Sybilt is going to restand itself, hence the Varga part, you can bind it and then change its drive check to 1, because Sybilt is going to restand with 0 drive checks, and this is just going to re-give the drive. And also, it's very important to use this just so you can combo out with Sybilt or even Sybilt for its retire. So, very important card for the deck, so you just have to run it, and it's part of the ride line search. In which we go to Sybilt itself with the mental pollution one. When this card attacks, you can retire one of your other rearguards and draw a card, and this card gets 5 power in battle. Basically, this is a berserk version of Sybilt before he actually died because of the mental pollution. In which we go to the Evil Dragon Sybilt herself, or Malwyrm Sybilt, which is basically the title, but it basically translates to Evil Dragon, which has a skill of act Vanguard once per turn. You can Soul Blast 1, choose the same number of rearguards as your opponent's grades, and put them in mental pollution state. So on grade 2 turn, choose 2 units, and your opponent's at grade 3, choose 3 units, and then they go in mental pollution state and they get plus 5k power, but at the end of the turn, they must be retired. So this is where you basically make them go berserk, and then they kill themselves at the end of the turn, which is going to combo with the order card where you bounce it back to hand, and maybe even other skills, because obviously you're going to get bonus when it comes to the deck. In which the second skill where once per turn at the end of this card, attack the Vanguard, cost combat 1, choose one of your mental pollution state rearguards or one of your Vanguards to stand it, but if your opponent's at least grade 3, you choose 2 units instead, and both units get plus 10k power. And if you restand the Vanguard, its drive becomes 0. So basically, giving you 2 additional attack, and also restanding Vanguard, which combos with the order card, giving you 1 drive check. Thus the order card making sense with the retire, because you're going to retire at the end of the turn, thus bouncing another card to your hand. But it also combos with the last skill where when one of your rearguards and mental pollution stays retired, you draw a card. And this is a once per turn ability, so unfortunately you cannot really do this per retire, but that will be a little OP, I will admit. So you do get 1 draw at the end of the phase, but basically you power up your board, but you have to kill them at the end of the turn, and you also get 2 restanding units, which also includes the Vanguard, and if you have the order card, 1 extra drive check. So that's why you're going to really want that order card. But really not much to say about this, because on its own it is pretty powerful. You can basically play any generics in the deck because of it, because it is pretty Vanguard centric, but its support does actually do quite a lot for the deck, especially giving you some extra pluses. But on its own, it's already pretty powerful. And then to continue off, you of course have to run more copies for Persona Riding, because Persona Riding, as the deck itself, can lack power on its first attacks until it restands. And then of course we run 4 copies of the order card. One was already shown, but the rest of them are just going to be shown now because you need the order card to make it full combo. And then to the rest of the support, so starting off with the grade 2 Dissonant Flare Dragon, which also works for any Unison Dragon deck. So your Vanguard's Unison Dragon, you get all the following. You can counterblast 1. When placed on rearguard, you can look at top 7 to search for 1 Unison Dragon or 1 order card that is not Regalia's piece and put to your hand. And of course, shuffle your deck, but if you fail, you draw a card. This is just your way to search for Persona or even your order card, hence why you already must run 4, but it also has a useful second skill where when this card attacks, this card gets a 5 power in battle, and then you can Energy Blast 3, choose one of your rearguards. It gets the ability to bounce back to hand if it's retired during the turn. So this is definitely one of those cards that combo well with the Sybilt, just because Mental Pollution is going to retire one of your rearguards, and this is just going to give the additional bounce ability. And this is going to be your main energy waster, so you can't really afford to use any other energy card besides this one, because this is literally going to bounce you so many cards since this is not once per turn, and considering that you could possibly attack with this twice, you can bounce 2 cards back. And also keep in mind your order card will also bounce another one back. So main searcher already makes this must run, but also additional abilities makes this also additional good option. And then next up, Baki, which when you play a normal order, while your Vanguard's Unison Dragon, you can counterblast 1 to call this to rearguard. The counterblast can get a little heavy in this deck because it is Dragon Empire, but it is a nice recovery option. With the second skill where if your opponent's Vanguard's at least grade 3, it gets plus 5k power while your Vanguard's Unison Dragon, but if it's in Mental Pollution, plus another 5k. So basically a big beater on Resurrection, and in Mental Pollution even better. Not much to say here, but it is a nice option to run, but you might end up taking this out just for counterblast reasons. And then, because we play orders, we got to play Latifa. You don't really need to play 4 in this deck, but Soul is not really much of an issue. But also, Superior Calling is not too much of an issue in this deck either. So 3 is enough, especially since this is a Superior Call engine for an order deck. And then finally, for the last generic, the Persona Shield Cycler, because Soul is not much of an issue, like I said, so why not? And also, you have quite a bit of draw power as well, so you don't want to risk decking yourself out, especially with your Sybilt extra drive check. And so that's it for the grade 2 lineup. Now for the grade 1 lineup, here's the new card, Configurate Dragon. So, when you play a normal order while your Vanguard's at least grade 3 Sybilt and you do not have a copy of it on rearguard, you can call it to rearguard from the drop zone, which is another free resurrection, and it's definitely better than the grade 2 because of it. But free resurrection is always very nice, even though it's a little restricted. But the second skill makes it even more useful, where if your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3 during your turn, if it's in Mental Pollution state, all other units in the same column as this unit gets with 5k power. So basically, potentially 2 attacks for the front row unit because of the restand, and also a card that can resurrect itself, which for Mental Pollution, if this card dies, you can bring it back, and in a way it does kind of stack, because if you bounce another one to your hand, you can always just Superior Call 1 and then call the other one to give it to your 2 restanding columns. So that's why I decided to run 4, because not only that it could resurrect itself, it does help with the numbers, so that's why this is as good as a 4 of. And it's one of your better support cards at the moment, so another reason for it to be a 4 of. But in the future, it could still be cut down to maybe 3, because I don't see it being 2 of, because it does help with the power. And then one card I did cut down to 2 is Shaghar, because this one, in Mental Pollution state while in the back row, if a unit in the same column is restood, you restand this unit while it's in Mental Pollution state, so it's basically a restand booster, which is of course very helpful. But considering that the other card gives power to the front row, and it's going to be the one that you're going to resurrect, that one ends up being the 4 of, while this one's a 2 of. It's just basically a backup booster basically, and most of the time you're not going to really bring this back. So restand booster 2 is enough, and you're going to end up taking this out in the future anyway. And then some more cards to run. So first off, Shenri. I would run more if I had more copies, but right now I only have 1 copy left, so that's why I'm playing Shenri as it is, as a 1 of. But at the same time, I have faced booster problems sometimes, especially when other boosters are occupying the board rather than this one. But Shenri is a good option for this deck due to the fact that you're also playing orders. And then a tech card I like to personally run is the Order Searcher, because you really need the order card, so this card is just very helpful just in case you need it. And then lastly, I run the generic just because potential personalized search on hit, or even just countercharge on hit, because it's just helpful for that. And also it helps with the extra power on boosting the Vanguard, so there's also that. And then finally, 4 PGs, because PGs. And into the trigger lineup, OT, a crit, because you want to kill your opponent as soon as possible, 3 draws so you can actually see your key pieces. The funny thing is, if you run fronts, you might not even have a good hand size, but at the same time you run draws, you can also deck out, so it's kind of a funny situation. But considering that you need key pieces, I do prefer to run the draws. And finally 4 heals and 2 being counters. And so that's it for this deck profile on my Sybilt deck. What do you guys think of it? What other cards would you recommend? And what other changes would you make? There is one other card that was for Sybilt at set 12, and I am kind of thinking of running it, but at the same time, it is a meh card in comparison to some of the generics. So in a way, I kind of like the way the deck is now. Because Sybilt herself as a deck is pretty flexible in running generics, as the deck is very Vanguard centric and everything else you run is just basically just good support or even just good generics just to make the deck even better. But I am kind of thinking of running that other rare card for Sybilt in set 12, just because that's the only other support. But other than that, the deck is just pretty fun to play and it is very budget friendly, just because most of the cards that you really need are not really too expensive. But I mainly just built this deck for lore reasons, and I kind of just like Sybilt, especially the playstyle. So I just kind of end up building the deck as it is. But it's also nice that the support cards for Unison Dragon is also with Sybilt, which I hope for more Unison Dragon support, so it works with both Gryandra and Sybilt, even though I don't play Gryandra. Because right now that's the only 2 decks that plays Unison Dragon, and I just kind of hope for more Unison Dragon theme, because I really love the idea of Unison Dragon. And also the lore Sybilt, I love that they expanded upon with the deck, so it just really makes me love this deck even more. And hopefully they do give more support in the future, like better stuff, like even a new form would be nice, even though I don't exactly think it's going to happen just because it's a lore based ride line. But that's just me. But on that, that's it for this, and see you all next time.